What is music? It may seem pseudo-intellectual to ask on the surface, but it's the only way we can answer the question posed in the title of this video. Is electronic music real music? If you're clicking on this video, it's most likely because you feel very strongly about either side, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you may find by the end of this video essay that both sides have more valid points than you originally imagined. Music, in my opinion, was best defined fundamentally by the composer Edgar Varese. He described it as organized sound in time. Some argue this definition because organized sound can also define a presidential speech.
I stand here knowing that my story is part of the larger American story.
Or a movie's vocal track.
Can't handle the truth!
Or even non-human orchestrated noises. Surprisingly enough, many cultures outside of the Western world don't have a word that directly translates to our definition of music. Many have some words that come close, which usually define their art of poetry, dance, expression, and sound, all with one word. There is no separation. Which does raise the question, is the term music itself a privilege and not a necessity? When we try to separate music as a different art form than, say, painting or sculpting or poetry, maybe we're losing the very essence of that art form itself. What separates electronic music from quote-unquote real music is the presence of an event. With real music, there was always a sense that you were listening in on a moment in time, whether it was a release of a live recording or an entire band writing inside of a studio. There was still the feeling of an event that you were part of. Most electronic music doesn't have that element. It was produced, processed, and completed all digitally. It's essentially a schematic of ones and zeros for the speaker to play. In my opinion, it changes the formula in a way that now makes the moment of the song when you listen to it. The event is you hearing it, not the producer making it. The same thing applies to the lack of lyrics in electronic music. Lyrics usually call back to past moments in time, like the moment a lover left you, or that one night you went all out and had the time of your life. These are all callbacks to previous events, meant to guide you through the history of that song. Electronic music lacks the backing of history. It normally has no story to tell, outside of a cerebral one. We can connect emotionally to sounds, but these emotions can vary from person to person, and it's not the same across the board. That's why you'll notice most electronic music videos, especially earlier in its life cycle, were just shots of the producer at his laptop, or a crowd jumping in slow motion while the DJ is playing. It's because these are really the only historical moments in the creation of this song. The artist producing it, and you experiencing it. Everything in between is usually just video fluff or interesting imagery, nothing that relates directly to the song itself. One of the most common complaints among people against electronic music is that it's just noise. But what separates music or organized sound from just noise? French musicologist Jean-Jacques Nattiez considers the separation between music and noise a cultural one, which basically means the hub of society decides what is music, or in layman's terms, the mainstream. This is what I meant by saying the term music is a privilege. Without the worry of survival on our minds constantly, we have time to think critically about art and the world around us, and sometimes too critically. We decide what is pleasant and enjoyable for everyone to listen to, but we also decide what no one should listen to, just based on social pressures. It's rarely a comment on the skill of the artist or the actual composition of a song, and more a comment on social norms and the pack mentality. Traditions, if you will. And traditions are probably the main component of the argument against electronic music. When Beethoven first premiered Grosse Fuge in 1825, his audience panned it for just sounding like noise. They asked for an encore of every single song that night, except for that one. This is because it was something different. When listening to it now, you can hear the several layers of melodies Beethoven wove together to create a one-of-a-kind new musical piece. But at the time, it just sounded like clashing notes to the audience. Their ears had become accustomed to their traditions. This would also help explain the stigma that every previous generation hates the next generation's music. It's not because music has gotten worse, but because traditions are being changed, and change can scare people. It's the reason we still have the 10 Commandments in the Supreme Court building, even though most of America strongly believe in a separation of church and state. Or the same reason you throw around the football with your cousins every Christmas. It's because if you didn't, something feels off. Something changed. And in my opinion, that is the greatest defining factor of electronic music, is that it challenges the traditions of old. It transcends the history and nostalgia of a song and brings it all down to one key moment. The moment you are experiencing it.